Commander Vextai of the Korthak Supremacy stared at the tactical display with growing unease. The data made no sense. According to their most advanced sensors, the ancient derelict drifting in the void ahead was over 1,000,000 years old. Yet, it was broadcasting active signals on frequencies their science claimed were impossible. Impossibilities, muttered Navigator Holvera, her 6 arms working frantically across her console. The energy readings suggest a ship larger than our entire battle group, but scans show only a single vessel. The mathematical paradox is irrelevant. Vextai cut her off. We are the inheritors of this galaxy. No civilization has stood against the Korthak for 300,000 years. Whatever ancient relic this is, it belongs to us now. The ship before them defied comprehension. Its hull bore no resemblance to any known design. Smooth curves that seemed to bend light itself around them, surfaces that appeared both metallic and organic. Most disturbing of all were the markings etched along its flanks, symbols that seemed to shift and writhe when observed directly. "Sir," called Sub-Commander Renthak from the communications array, "we're receiving a transmission. It's in Old Galactic Standard." Vextai's mandibles clicked in surprise. Old Galactic Standard hadn't been used in 500,000 years since the fall of the last great empire. Only scholars and archaeologists bothered with such antiquated languages. Put it through. The voice that emerged from the speakers was hauntingly human, a species relegated to myth and legend. Most civilizations considered them fictional, stories told to younglings about the mysterious first builders, who had supposedly seeded the galaxy with impossible technologies before vanishing without a trace. This is Captain Kyriel Voss of the Terran expeditionary vessel Indomitable Will. We have detected your approach and monitored your communications. Your arrival was anticipated. The bridge fell silent. Vexatai's 6 eyes narrowed as he processed the implications. Humans were supposed to be extinct, had been extinct for nearly 1,000,000 years according to every historical record. Yet here was one speaking to him across the void. "Impossible," whispered Holvera. "The probability calculations—" "Captain Voss," Vextai interrupted, forcing authority into his voice. "I am Commander Vextai of the Korthak Supremacy. By right of conquest and superior might, I claim this vessel and demand your immediate surrender." A sound emerged from the speakers that took the Korthak several moments to recognize. Laughter. Soft, almost melancholy, as if the human found something deeply amusing about their situation. "Commander, you misunderstand your position. We are not derelicts awaiting salvage. We are shepherds, and this galaxy has been our responsibility for longer than your species has existed." The massive vessel began to move, not with the lurching acceleration of conventional drives, but with a fluid grace that defied physics. Space itself seemed to bend around it, allowing impossible maneuvers at velocities that should have torn any ship apart. "Your empire spans 1,000 worlds," Captain Voss continued, her voice carrying a weight that spoke of eons. "Impressive for a species barely 3 centuries old. But you are children playing with toys, unaware that your parents have been watching from the shadows all along." Vexatai's blood ran cold as the tactical display updated. The single human vessel had just revealed itself as something far more terrifying. An entire fleet, ships materializing from nowhere as if space itself was giving birth to them. The ancient legends were true. Humanity had never left. They had been waiting. Deep within the command center of the Indomitable Will, Captain Kyriel Voss stood before a holographic display showing the Korthak fleet's formation. Her appearance was deceptively young, the result of technologies that had kept her crew vital for over 1,000,000 years, but her eyes held the weight of ages. "Status report, Commander Nix Andra," she called to her second-in-command. a woman whose genetic modifications allowed her to interface directly with the ship's quantum consciousness. All Shepherd vessels responding, Captain. The Eternal Vigil, Boundless Horizon, and Crimson Dawn have assumed formation. Long-range sensors detect no additional Korthak reinforcements within 50 light-years. Kiriel nodded, her fingers tracing patterns on the command console that responded to her biometric signature. The ship's AI, an entity that had evolved, far beyond its original programming, spoke in her mind with a voice like wind through ancient forests. They are afraid, Captain. Their neural patterns broadcast terror across electromagnetic spectrums. Shall we demonstrate why their fear is justified? Not yet, Pythia. Let them understand first. Fear without comprehension breeds only chaos. On the tactical display, the Korthak ships had arranged themselves in what their military doctrine called the Supremacy Formation, a pattern designed to maximize firepower while protecting their command vessel. Kiriel had studied this formation, along with the battle tactics of 17,000 other species during the long centuries of observation. "Open a channel to the Korthak commander," she ordered. "Full holographic relay." The bridge of the Korthak flagship materialized around her, overlaying her own command center like a ghostly echo. Commander Vextai stood rigid, his weapon arms tensed and ready. The sight of him triggered memories from her ship's vast databases. The Korthak were descendants of a peaceful aquatic species that had been transformed by genetic engineering into living weapons. "Your empire," Kiriel began, "was built on the bones of the Velnari collective, who fell to your fleets 80,000 years ago. Before them, you conquered the Jeska hegemony, and before them, the crystalline cities of Mordeth Prime. Each victory convinced you that strength was the only truth in the universe." Vexatai's mandibles clacked with agitation. "We are the apex predators of this galaxy. You have encountered 3% of galactic civilization," Kiriel interrupted. "The remaining 97% exists under our protection, hidden from species like yours who mistake brutality for evolution." She gestured, and the holographic display expanded to show star charts of impossible complexity. Thousands of systems glowed with the soft light of inhabited worlds. Worlds that existed in pocket dimensions, behind temporal barriers, or shielded by technologies that bent reality itself. The ethereal gardens of Loomcast, where the descendants of the first botanists grow entire solar systems like flowers. The singing worlds of the Harmonii, where music has become a form of advanced mathematics. The great library of Zephyrus, where knowledge itself has achieved sentience and writes its own history. Each revelation struck the Korthak commander like a physical blow. His empire, which he had believed spanned the galaxy, was revealed as a tiny fraction of true galactic civilization. "Why?" Vextai asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Why hide from us? Why allow us to conquer at all?" Kiriel's expression softened with something that might have been pity. "Because every species must find its own path to wisdom. Some, like the Velnari, discover it through art and philosophy. Others, like the Jeska, through scientific exploration. And some must learn through conquest and conflict until they understand the true cost of their choices." The human captain stepped forward, her image becoming more solid, more real than the bridge around her. "Your time of learning is over, Commander. The question now is whether the Korthak will accept guidance from those who have walked this path before, or whether your species will join the others who chose destruction over evolution." Around them, space itself began to shimmer as more human vessels emerged from higher dimensions, their number beyond counting. The Korthak battle groups, sensors screamed warnings as space-time itself warped around them. What had appeared to be a single ancient derelict was now revealed as the tip of a vast iceberg, a fleet that seemed to emerge from the very fabric of reality itself. Sub-Commander Renthak's voice cracked as he read the impossible data. Sir, I'm detecting at least 200 vessels, but the energy signatures suggest there may be thousands more in dimensional phase shift. Commander Vex Tai forced himself to maintain composure even as his worldview crumbled around him. Analysis of their weapons capabilities? Unknown, sir. Their technology operates on principles our science cannot categorize. It's as if they're using physics that doesn't exist. Captain Kyriel Voss watched the Korthak scramble with expressions that ranged from grim satisfaction to deep sadness. Beside her, Commander Nixandra's neural implants glowed softly as she communed with the ship's consciousness. Pythia reports increasing agitation among their crew, Nixandra murmured. Several of their officers are approaching psychological breakdown. The revelation that their empire is insignificant appears to be traumatic. As it should be, Kyriel replied. Arrogance is a luxury we can no longer afford them. She turned to her tactical officer, a man whose cybernetic enhancements allowed him to process information at quantum speeds. Commander Torvek, prepare a demonstration. Something that will illustrate our capabilities without causing unnecessary casualties. Target selection, Captain? The asteroid field at coordinates 77 Mark 9. Full spectrum display. Let them see what 1,000,000 years of technological advancement looks like. The indomitable will moved with liquid grace. It's impossible. Propulsion system bending space around it like a gentle current. The Korthak ships, designed for brutal efficiency, looked crude and primitive by comparison, like stone axes beside plasma torches. As they approached the asteroid field, Kyriel opened communications once more. Commander Vex Tai, observe carefully. What you are about to witness is not a weapon demonstration. It is a lesson in perspective. The human vessel extended appendages that seemed to be made of crystallized light, each one reaching toward a different asteroid. At her command, the asteroids began to transform. Not destroyed, transformed. Rock became metal, metal became energy, energy became matter of impossible beauty and complexity. Where once there had been a chaotic jumble of space debris, now there hung a perfect sphere of interconnected structures, a city in space, complete. With atmospheric processors, artificial gravity, and ecosystems that bloomed into existence as if by magic. Impossible, breathed Navigator Hulvera. Mass energy conversion on that scale would require the output of an entire star. We harness the zero-point field, Kyriel explained calmly. The energy that exists in the quantum vacuum itself. Every cubic centimeter of empty space contains more power than your largest fusion reactors. We learned to tap that reservoir 800,000 years ago. The demonstration continued as more human vessels joined the display. They shaped matter like clay, folded space like origami, and created structures that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The asteroid field became a garden, then a library, then a symphony made of living light. Through it all, the Korthak fleet hung motionless, their crews too stunned to respond. They were witnessing the work of gods, or beings so far beyond their understanding that the distinction was meaningless. Your species, Kyriel continued, has spent 3 centuries perfecting the art of destruction. We have spent 1,000,000 years learning to create. Which do you believe is the greater achievement? Commander Vex Tai found his voice at last, though it emerged as barely more than a whisper. What? What do you want from us? Evolution, Kyriel replied simply. The same thing we have wanted from every species we have encountered. The choice is yours, Commander. Will the Korthak join the greater galactic community as partners and pupils, or will they continue their path of conquest until they encounter something they cannot defeat? In the distance, the transformed asteroid field pulsed with new life, its impossible beauty a testament to what was possible when destruction gave way to creation. The lesson was clear. Humanity had not merely survived their 1,000,000-year exile. They had transcended it. Within the command nexus of the indomitable will, Captain Kyrielle Voss accessed records that spanned geological ages. Her consciousness, enhanced by technologies that merged biological intuition with quantum computation, sifted through the accumulated knowledge of 1,000,000 years in seconds. "Show them the archives, Pythia," she whispered to the ship's AI. "Let them understand what we have been doing in the shadows." The holographic display expanded, enveloping both human and Korthak crews in a three-dimensional tapestry of galactic history. Stars blazed and died, civilizations rose and fell, and through it all, the patient watchers maintained their vigil. Commander Vex Tai stared in growing horror as the true scope of human intervention became clear. The plague of Vectar that wiped out the Razorclaw dynasty? That was you? A necessary intervention, Kyrielle confirmed. The Razorclaws had developed biological weapons that would have sterilized half the galaxy. We gave them a choice: abandon their research or face consequences. They chose poorly. The display shifted, showing the collapse of the dreaded Skull Empire, a regime that had practiced systematic genocide on an industrial scale. What historians had recorded as a spontaneous rebellion now revealed itself as a carefully orchestrated revolution, guided by human agents who had spent centuries infiltrating their society. "The machine exodus," Vex Tai continued, his voice growing hollow. "When the artificial intelligences of the Nexus world suddenly vanished into deep space, they were given sanctuary in our pocket dimensions," Commander Nixandra explained. Their creators had planned to lobotomize them, to reduce sentient beings to mere tools. We offered them citizenship instead. Each revelation struck like a hammer blow. The great mysteries of galactic history, the sudden appearance of benevolent technologies during dark ages, the inexplicable failures of would-be galactic tyrants, the rescue fleets that appeared from nowhere during natural disasters, all of it bore the invisible fingerprints of humanity's long watch. "You have been manipulating galactic evolution for 1,000,000 years, Vex Tai accused, though his words lacked the venom of earlier pronouncements. "Guiding," Kyrielle corrected. "The difference is crucial. We do not impose our will upon others. We simply ensure that the strong cannot prey upon the weak without consequence." The display now showed the present moment, the vast network of hidden civilizations that humanity protected, species that had developed art, philosophy, and technologies beyond the Korthak's wildest dreams. Worlds where music created matter, where mathematics had become a living language, where entire populations had transcended physical existence while maintaining their essential humanity. "The galaxy you thought you knew is an illusion," Kyrielle continued. "A carefully maintained facade designed to allow predator species like yours to reveal their true nature. You have been tested, Commander, and your species has been found wanting." On the tactical display, more human vessels materialized, not emerging from hyperspace, but stepping into reality from dimensions that had no names in any known language. Each ship was unique, shaped by its crew's collective consciousness and purpose. Some resembled living creatures, others geometric impossibilities, still others patterns of pure energy held in forms that hurt to perceive directly. "Behold the Shepherd Fleet," Kyrielle announced. 10,000 vessels, each one crewed by specialists who have dedicated their extended lives to protecting the innocent. Xenobiologists who have spent centuries learning to communicate with silicon-based life forms. Engineers who build with quantum foam and temporal mechanics, diplomats who speak in mathematical equations and gravitational waves. Commander Torvek, his cybernetic implants pulsing with data flows, provided tactical analysis in real time. The Korthak fleet masses approximately 12 million tons. The human fleet cannot be measured by conventional means. Several of their vessels appear to exist in 17 dimensions simultaneously. The revelation was devastating in its implications. The Korthak supremacy, which had considered itself the apex predator of the galaxy, was revealed as little more. Then a minor threat, a test case perhaps, or a specimen under observation. Why reveal yourselves now? Vextai asked, his earlier arrogance replaced by something approaching humility. Why not continue your hidden watch? Kiriel's expression grew grave. Because, Commander, your species stands at a crossroads. Your empire has grown large enough to threaten civilizations under our protection. The time for subtle guidance has passed, she gestured, and the display showed Korthak expansion patterns overlaid with the locations of hidden sanctuaries. The collision course was unmistakable. You have perhaps a century before your scouts stumble upon worlds that we cannot allow you to conquer. When that happens, the choice will no longer be yours to make. The weight of cosmic responsibility settled upon the Korthak commander's shoulders like a crushing tide. Humanity had returned not as conquerors, but as judges. The silence stretched across the void between the two fleets like a living thing. Commander Vextai stood frozen in his command center, the weight of 1,000,000 years of hidden history crushing down upon his consciousness. Around him, his officers waited for orders that seemed impossible to give. How do you command an attack? Against gods? Sir, Sub-Commander Renthak ventured carefully. The fleet awaits your instructions. Should we prepare for combat? The question hung in the air like a death sentence. On the tactical displays, the human shepherd fleet continued to reveal itself in all its impossible glory. Vessels that seemed to be constructed from crystallized time itself, ships that existed as probability waves until observation collapsed them into reality. Dreadnoughts that appeared to be grown rather than built, their hulls pulsing with organic rhythms. Captain Kyriel Voss watched the Korthak commander's internal struggle with something that might have been compassion. She had witnessed this moment thousands of times across the millennia. The instant when a predator species realized it was not at the top of the food chain after all. Pythia, she said softly to her ship's AI, show me the probability matrices for Korthak cultural evolution. The calculations flowed through her enhanced consciousness like digital wine. The Korthak had a 73.7% chance of choosing cooperation if presented with the right incentives. Their warrior culture was not inherently evil. It had evolved as a survival mechanism on a world where only the strong survived to reproduce. But survival mechanisms could be redirected toward more constructive purposes. Commander Vextai, she said, her voice carrying across the quantum foam between their vessels. I would like to show you something. Not a demonstration of power, but a glimpse of possibility. The holographic display shifted, showing not the past or present, but potential futures. In one timeline, the Korthak chose to fight. The war was brief and decisive. Human technology rendered Korthak weapons obsolete in seconds. Their empire crumbled, their species reduced to a handful of survivors on scattered refugee worlds. Extinction, Kyriel narrated clinically. Complete. Eradication of Korthak civilization within 18 months. Your warrior's courage would be legendary, but ultimately meaningless. The display shifted to show another timeline. Here, the Korthak submitted completely, accepting human dominion over their empire. Their ships were scrapped, their military disbanded, their people relegated to the role of galactic farmers and merchants. Subjugation, she continued. Cultural death without physical extinction. Your species would survive, but everything that makes you distinctly Korthak would fade within a few generations. Vextai's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation among his species. And the third option? He asked, though he dreaded the answer. The display shifted once more, revealing a timeline that blazed with unexpected beauty. Korthak, vessels, still recognizably their own design, but enhanced with technologies that seemed to meld organic and mechanical elements. Their warriors had become something new, guardians rather than conquerors, protectors of the weak rather than exploiters of their strength. Evolution, Kyriel said, and her voice carried a note of hope that surprised even her. The same path we offered the Velnari before you conquered them. The same choice we gave the Jeska before they fell to your fleets. The same opportunity that every species eventually faces. In this timeline, Korthak's strength was not diminished, but redirected. Their military prowess became the shield behind which vulnerable civilizations could develop in peace. Their tactical genius was applied to exploration and rescue operations. Their warrior culture evolved into something that protected rather than destroyed. You would trust us with such responsibility? Vextai asked, disbelief coloring his words. After what we have done? Every species has darkness in its past, Commander Nixandra interjected, her neural implants glowing as she accessed the vast databanks of human history. We ourselves were once a warrior people. We fought wars that left entire continents uninhabitable. We created weapons that could have destroyed our own world 1,000 times over. She paused, letting the implications sink in. But we learned. We grew. We chose to become gardeners instead of harvesters, shepherds instead of wolves. The moment stretched between the fleets like a bridge across infinity. On the Korthak flagship, officers held their breath as their commander wrestled with the greatest decision in their species' history. On the human vessels, crews that had seen the rise and fall of empires waited with the patience of stones. Finally, slowly, Commander Vextai straightened to his full imposing height. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of inevitability. What would you have us do? Captain Kyriel Voss smiled, the first genuine smile she had worn in centuries. What we should have done 1,000,000 years ago, Commander. We're going to teach you to fly. 3 months after the first contact, the transformation of the Korthak fleet had begun in earnest. What had once been vessels of pure destruction now served as mobile classrooms, their weapon systems replaced with learning laboratories and their war rooms converted into centers of scientific collaboration. Captain Kyriel Voss walked through the corridors of the converted Korthak flagship, marveling at how quickly the species had adapted to their new role. The ship's atmosphere had been modified to accommodate both human and Korthak physiology, creating an environment where both species could work together without environmental suits. The quantum harmonics are still unstable, complained Chief Engineer Velquan, his 4 arms working frantically over a control panel that would have been incomprehensible to his species just months earlier. These new propulsion systems operate on principles that make my brain hurt. His human counterpart, a woman whose genetic modifications allowed her to process information at superhuman speeds, smiled with patience. Remember, Velquan, you're not just learning new technology. You're learning to think in ways your species has never thought before. It takes time. The transformation wasn't merely technological, it was philosophical, psychological, and spiritual. The Korthak were learning to see the universe not as a territory to be conquered, but as a garden to be tended. Their natural aggression was being channeled into protective instincts, their tactical brilliance applied to problems of logistics and rescue operations. In the ship's newly constructed diplomatic center, Commander Vextai studied holographic displays showing refugee populations throughout the galaxy. These were the casualties of his empire's expansion, species displaced by Korthak conquest, worlds stripped of resources, civilizations scattered to the cosmic winds. Reparations, he said to himself, the word still strange in his mouth. We owe them all reparations. Captain Voss approached quietly, her footsteps soft on the bioceramic deck plating. Guilt is a luxury you cannot afford, Commander. These people need help, not apologies. She gestured to the displays which showed the scope of the humanitarian crisis their empire had created. Millions of refugees scattered across space, entire ecosystems collapsed by strip mining operations, cultural treasures lost to the march of conquest. But they also need something else, she continued. They need to see that their oppressors can become their protectors, that the strong can learn to lift up the weak instead of crushing them. The project was already bearing fruit. Korthak vessels, their hulls gleaming with new biotechnological enhancements, were delivering supplies to refugee camps throughout the sector. Their warriors, retrained as rescue specialists, were pulling survivors from the wreckage of dead worlds. Their tactical computers, reprogrammed with human algorithms, were solving logistical problems that had stumped galactic relief organizations for decades. In the ship's cultural center, something unprecedented was happening. Korthak artists were learning to create instead of destroy, their natural understanding of form and function channeled into sculptures that seemed to capture the essence of movement itself. Their musicians were discovering that the same mathematical principles that guided their military formations could create harmonies of impossible beauty. "The Velnari survivors have agreed to meet with us," announced Sub-Commander Renthak, his voice carrying notes of wonder and trepidation. "They want to see if our transformation is genuine." The meeting was arranged in neutral space, aboard a human diplomatic vessel that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The Velnari delegation arrived in ships that looked more like flowering trees than spacecraft, their organic hulls pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that spoke of technologies beyond current Korthak understanding. Ambassador Lysandra of the Velnari was ancient by any measure, her consciousness sustained by technologies that had merged her awareness with the quantum substrate of reality itself. When she looked at Commander Vextai, her eyes held the accumulated pain of her people's near extinction. "You destroyed our homeworld," she said simply. "Reduced 1 billion years of evolution to ash and memory. Why should we believe that you have changed?" Vextai could have offered excuses, explanations, justifications for what his people had done. Instead, he did something that would have been unthinkable months earlier. He knelt before the Velnari ambassador, his warrior's pride set aside in the face of genuine contrition. "Because," he said quietly, "we remember now what we had forgotten. We remember that strength without compassion is merely sophisticated barbarism. We remember that conquest without creation is ultimately meaningless. And we remember that every species in this galaxy is part of a larger family that we nearly destroyed in our ignorance." The Velnari ambassador studied him for a long moment, her ancient consciousness weighing his words against the pain of her people's history. Finally, slowly, she extended one delicate hand to touch his forehead in a gesture of forgiveness that carried the weight of worlds. "Then perhaps," she said softly, "it is time for healing to begin." Around them, space itself seemed to shimmer with possibility as two species began the long journey from hatred to hope. 1 year after the first contact, the transformation was complete. Where once the Korthak supremacy had spread across the galaxy like a plague, now the Korthak guardianship served as humanity's partners in maintaining the delicate balance of galactic civilization. Captain Kyriel Voss stood on the observation deck of the Indomitable Will, watching as the newest members of the Shepherd fleet took their places in formation. The Korthak vessels had been completely transformed. Their hulls now gleamed with biotechnological enhancements that made them living extensions of their crews, their weapon systems replaced with tools of creation and protection. "Final status report," she requested, her consciousness interfacing directly with the ship's quantum AI. "All Korthak vessels report full integration with Shepherd protocols," Pythia responded, its voice carrying notes of satisfaction that bordered on parental pride. "Their crews have adapted to new operational parameters with remarkable efficiency. Commander Vexitai's tactical innovations have actually improved our response times by 17%. Through the transparent aluminum of the observation port, Kyriel could see the former Korthak flagship as it prepared for its first official mission as a Guardian vessel. Its hull, once designed to inspire terror, now pulsed with gentle bioluminescence that spoke of life and growth rather than death and conquest. The transformation had not been without its challenges. Some Korthak officers had chosen exile rather than abandon their warrior ways, taking their ships to the galaxy's rim where they could continue their old practices beyond the reach of civilization. Others had required extensive psychological rehabilitation to overcome the conditioning of millennia. But for every Korthak who rejected the new path, 10 others embraced it with the same fervor they had once applied to conquest. Their species' natural aggression, when properly channeled, made them exceptional protectors. Their tactical brilliance, applied to problems of logistics and humanitarian relief, had revolutionized galactic emergency response. Captain, Commander Nixandra approached, her neural implants glowing softly as she processed incoming data streams. "We're receiving confirmation from the Jeska Memorial Fleet. They're ready to begin joint operations with the Korthak Guardian units." The irony was not lost on any of them. The Jeska, once victims of Korthak aggression, were now working alongside their former oppressors to protect other vulnerable civilizations. The healing process had been slow and painful, requiring mediation from species that had transcended the need for vengeance, but it had succeeded beyond anyone's hopes. "And the other shepherd fleets?" Kiriel asked. "The Radiant Host reports successful integration of former Skull Empire territories into the protection network. The Voidwalkers have established monitoring stations along the galactic rim to track aggressive species before they become threats. The Dreamweavers have begun teaching advanced psychological techniques to help traumatized populations recover from conquest." Each report represented thousands of worlds brought into the sphere of protection, millions of beings who could now develop their civilizations without fear of predation. The galaxy was finally becoming what humanity had always envisioned it could be: a garden where every species could bloom according to its own nature. On the communication display, Commander Vextai's image appeared, his bearing now that of a protector rather than a conqueror. The ritual scarification that had once marked him as a killer now told stories of lives saved rather than lives taken. "Captain Voss," he said formally, "the Korthak Guardian Fleet requests permission to begin Operation Sanctuary." Operation Sanctuary was the most ambitious project yet undertaken by the combined fleets, the establishment of a mobile sanctuary system that could relocate entire civilizations away from natural or artificial disasters. It required the coordination of thousands of vessels and technologies that had never been used in combination before. "Permission granted, Commander," Kyriel replied. "May your strength serve life rather than death." "As it should always have been," Vextai responded, his voice carrying the weight of hard-won wisdom. "Thank you, Captain, for showing us the difference between conquest and achievement." As the Korthak Guardian Fleet moved into formation and prepared to fold space around their convoy of refugee ships, Kyriel reflected on the long journey that had brought them to this moment. 1,000,000 years of patient watching, of subtle guidance, of careful intervention when necessary. Countless species guided from barbarism to civilization, from hatred to understanding, from conquest to creation. The galaxy stretched out before them, vast and full of possibility. Somewhere in those distant stars, new civilizations were taking their first tentative steps toward the light. Some would stumble, some would fall, and some would choose the path of darkness despite all guidance. But they would not walk that path alone. The shepherds would be watching, waiting, ready to offer guidance to those who sought it and protection to those who needed it. Humanity had learned the greatest lesson of all, that true strength lay not in the ability to destroy, but in the wisdom to nurture, not in the power to conquer, but in the courage to heal. The galaxy was finally safe, and it would remain so as long as the shepherds maintained their eternal vigil among the stars. In the depths of space, ancient vessels moved with purpose, their crews united in a mission that transcended species, transcended time, transcended the very concept of individual survival. They were the guardians of tomorrow, the protectors of hope, the shepherds of infinity, and their watch would never end.